Good day and welcome to Conquering Chaos and Mayhem. I'm your moderator, Brett Glover, and I'm pleased to introduce our host, Darryl Culley. Darryl, I know you're excited to speak with our guest today. You've known him for quite a while. You've got a lot of stories you've been sharing with me about this guy, so I'm excited to learn more about him too. What do you say we get going?
Awesome. Let's get started.
All right, let's introduce fire and emergency management specialist with over 3 decades experience in the field, Lyle Quan. Lyle, thank you for joining us on Conquering Chaos and Mayhem.
It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to share some of my experiences with the rest of the viewers.
Well, I'm really excited to learn more. I know that Darryl is going to tease some information out of you as we go, and heck, we're just going to have a good time about it. So, Darryl, I know you got a bunch of questions for your friend Lyle. Did you want to launch into those?
All right. Abu Dhabi recently made a decision that they want to be the best fire department in the world. And when they made that decision, they came directly to you to lead that project. What was the first thing that went through your head when they approached you?
Well, that's a great question because I would have to say I was speechless at first. As you know, Darryl, I've done some work with Abu Dhabi and Dubai with their emergency services and evaluated their programs. So I think that gave me a bit of an edge. I've created some good partnerships as a result of that. And it all actually started that way through a partnership where a couple of people asked if I could put together a submission as to taking the Abu Dhabi Civil Defense Fire and Emergency Services to another level, so to speak. So I put together a very short synopsis and didn't think about it for several months, actually. And then all of a sudden I get a message from them. They wanted to talk to me. And when I spoke to the general in charge of the civil defense, I asked him one simple question. What is your goal at the end of the day? And he, without taking a breath or anything, he just said, to be the best. That's it. So I said, well, I'm here to help you. And from there, it just sprung right into where do we go and the opportunity to go out there for this 2-year project. So I'm really looking forward to it.
That's exciting. But what are the key steps to make that happen then?
Well, you know what? It's a good point because you hear a lot of people say we want to be the best in the world. But the question is, how are they being measured? So we can say we are the best, but compared to what? And that's exactly what I put to the general in Abu Dhabi. I said, in order to be the best, how are we going to measure that? And how are we going to obtain that? So as you know, I've been part of the Commission on Fire Service Accreditation program for quite a few years, which is kind of the I'll say the foundation, the hallmark for fire service measuring towards excellence. And I mentioned to them that here's an opportunity to use a program that's out there. It's accepted, it's recognized and respected in the field of emergency services. And this is the basis that we can utilize. From there, we can move forward to go beyond that. So a quick example. If the program says, we hope that you can respond within 8 minutes, 90% of the time, well, if we can prove that, then what's our next step? Well, now to go towards excellence, we want to go in 7 minutes or 6 minutes. But at least this way they've been measured. And that was the key point there.
Opportunity to work with dozens and dozens of fire departments across Canada, United States, through your accreditation program. Internationally, you've been in the United Arab Emirates before, Ghana, other places. When you're looking at the best and all these fire departments that you've visited, what do the very best have in common?
I was just thinking about Guyana and, being a country that is third world, so they're struggling to try and be the best. And what I did when I worked with them as compared to, say, the UAE, and which are 2 different worlds, we'll say, financially more than anything else. But what I found is the fire and emergency services in general all want to achieve the same thing. They want to serve their community in the best possible way that they can do it. So I take each client, I'll call it, individually. And Guyana was an excellent point. They didn't have a lot of finance, a lot of resources. So what could they do with what they had to meet their goals and expectations? How could they obtain their level of excellence in order to be the best within their area? So looking at that, and then looking at Abu Dhabi or the U.S., they different level of resources. So again, it's looking at the individual and what they can do with what they have, and how they can capitalize on what they have. So that's really what I focus on.
I imagine a lot of that comes down to leadership. And you have co-authored 2 books on fire service leadership. And you have a reputation as an amazing leader. What makes a great leader?
There's so many things that are involved in being a good leader. I consider there's different styles of leaders. So I consider myself what they call a servant leader, in that I look at that I'm here for you. I'm here to make you the best that you can be. And so what can I do to make you the best person, the best leader? And a lot of that is leading by example to begin with. Like, there's a saying that will never, ever go out of style. A couple of things that some very wise people taught me as I was growing into my leadership, I could say. And that's, do it unto others as you would have done unto you. Key thing. Another key thing I learned was be careful of what you say. Always speak as if everybody in the room can hear what you have to say. That way, others aren't going to turn around and say, well, if Lyle is saying about this when I'm not in the room, what's he saying when someone else isn't in the room? Little things like this I try and promote. And there's no big secret about leadership. It's really being who you are, being true to who you are, treating people the way they want to be treated and how you would want to be treated. It all comes down to just giving opportunities also. So if I seen within any organization I worked in, if I seen someone who was, let's say, an up-and-coming person, and they wanted opportunity, I would give them every opportunity I could. It's also about allowing people to fail, because we learn from our mistakes. I told my deputy chiefs or anybody that I've worked with, I would rather you fail at trying than not try at all. So, and at the end of the day, if they failed, my simple question to them was, what did we learn about this? What are we going to do different? And that's all I can expect from anybody. I'm human. I'm going to fail. I'm going to make mistakes. But did I learn from those mistakes? And did I capitalize on that? So to me, those are some of the key things about leadership, allowing people to be who they are and to understand that they are the organization too. Darryl, and you and I have chatted about this a lot, that we can only do so much as leaders of the organization. It's the people that are working with us that make the difference at the end of the day. And I know that you and I have shared that with a lot of the people we work with.
And it comes down to the inherent belief that people want to do their best.
Yes.
They just have to be given the opportunity, right? And you're a great example of that, giving people the opportunity to prove themselves. So awesome. Thank you. Do you believe cultural differences play a difference in the emergency response world? For example, would someone in Canada respond in a different way than someone in Abu Dhabi or Guyana? What can you tell us about that? Like, different people in different cultures, different communities?
You know what? It's a good question because I've had this opportunity to work with different countries and different cultures. I'll go back to what I said earlier. The emergency services are the emergency services. And it doesn't matter what country I've been in. They are focused on meeting the needs of the community. Now, cultural differences, Abu Dhabi, UAE was a good example where there is a bit of a cultural difference that men don't, like me coming there, I'm not to touch a woman, unless you're married to that woman. Whereas here in North America, a simple thing that we meet a woman in North America, having a handshake is just a natural thing. In Abu Dhabi or Dubai or UAE, that's not accepted unless you're married to that person. So for emergency services, what did they do there? Well, the ambulance service is a good example. They created several different styles of ambulances, and they have one that is for females only. And it has female paramedics to show respect for that individual so that they are being taken care of in the proper way in the culture that they believe in. So there are some differences, yes, but in general, I don't think you're going to see a lot of difference in the emergency service culture itself, which is do the best you can with what you have.
In Canada, you and I have traveled across Canada together. We've been to places like Iqaluit and Fogo Island out in the North Atlantic Ocean and Victoria, Vancouver, big cities in Toronto and little rural communities in Alberta. All have their own cultures. What's the thing that brings people together in our industry, the emergency services industry?
Great question, because you're right. Like we've traveled quite a bit over the years since we've been working together. And I think what brings them all together goes right back to that same thing I started saying, is that it's the goal of those individuals. So whether you're a volunteer service, a career service, a composite service, whether you're a big city, small town, doesn't matter. What is the goal? What is the aim? And the aim is to make the community safer, to protect the community as best they can, to educate the community in fire safety, public safety, whatever it might be. So that's what I found. And, as you say, Fogo Island, beautiful, beautiful community, total volunteer department. But you look at the dedication of those people. And what's it about? It's taking care of their neighbors. In a big city, same thing. It's taking care of their neighbors and ensuring the safety of those people. So that's the culture I think that goes across around the world, honestly. And you and I have had the pleasure of even going to other countries, Germany, Singapore, all of these other places, and I think we see that. Another thing I've seen is that whenever I've gone to another country and introduced myself as a firefighter to firefighters, it's almost like as though there's this hug that's coming at you. Recently, my wife and I went on a cruise to Panama Canal, and we stopped in one area where firefighters were taking donations to help support their volunteer department, and they were selling hats and different things. So of course, I threw in $20 to help, and I got myself a nice hat out of it. But as soon as I mentioned I was a firefighter, it was, oh, come on over here. Let me show you this. I'm going to say band of brothers, but I don't mean it in a gender neutral way. It's a band of compatriots, that it doesn't matter whether you're male, female, you are part of the emergency service. And I love that culture.
Once it's in you, it's always in you.
Yeah.
And in that way, long after you and I have finished our active role, we continue to serve. And because of that, right, you're part of it. How does your background as an educator change your perspective in interacting with others in your role?
I was thinking about that, about my education and why I focus so much on that through my educational journey. It's and it really started when I was in Markham Fire Department, and I moved up into the training division, and I realized how much I loved teaching. And I found the more I taught, the more I wanted to know about something. And so I became almost like starved I wanted to eat all the time. I wanted to get this information. And that's what really started my educational journey in a lot of ways. So when I was in Markham, of course, I had gone to Dalhousie University, got their fire service leadership, fire service administration certificates. And I found that wasn't enough for me. I became hungrier and I wanted more because I wanted to understand different ways of teaching and educating people. And that's where I eventually, got my bachelor's in educational leadership. And then I went to my master's in, leadership in education. And I taught with the Office of the Fire Marshal at the Ontario Fire College. It's just that there's a level of satisfaction that I gain out of teaching and imparting some of the knowledge that I've gained over the years. And I like to think that I have something to give back. So I gained something as I grew, and now I can give that back. So education is very, very important to me. And I probably am the poster child for lifelong learning.
Well, and Lyle's being really humble here. If you know his background, you know that he's also been a professor at 2 universities. He was the manager of academic AS&E, Academic Standards in Education for the Ontario Fire Marshal. He was also the manager of academic standards at the Ontario Fire College, and so much more. I mean, there's just so much in one person. It's amazing, and that academics that you've been able to share, I know because I get to talk to hundreds of chiefs a year, and how many times they've said, "Oh, you got Lyle on your team. He's the best of the best," or "He taught me, 20 years ago," or "He taught me last year." It's just your ability to share has just been amazing, and to share and to educate. So we're talking about peers. We're talking about all these people, and you, of anyone, have got this reputation of being a leader in the field, of being up there with the top in the country or around the world. Why is it important to maintain good relationships with your peers in the industry? And whether that's being as, fire chief in Waterloo or with the fire marshal's office or consulting, what drives you to maintain this good relations?
That's a very good question. I don't think I've really reached into my soul to ask that kind of a question, but I think it's an industry that I love. It's an industry that I want to keep giving back to. I love working with the people in the industry, the fire chiefs, the deputy chiefs, the captains, everybody. And even when we do the booth at the trade shows and stuff like that, just meeting people, and there's just something special about doing that energizes me and wants me to continue doing that kind of thing. And the beauty about it is I learn from everybody too. I would never ever think that I know everything, because I don't. And I find that every contract we do, I learn something. And you tweaked me on something. One of the projects that we just recently took on, I was down meeting with the fire chief and the deputy chief and talking about the project and where we're going to go with it and the goals and expectations. And they loaned me an office area to start doing a bit of work there. And someone walked in, one of their officers, and said, "I just had to come in and meet Lyle Quan." And I was kind of taken aback by it. And I said, "Why would you say that?" And he said, "Do you know what your reputation is like out there?" And I said, "Well, I sincerely hope it's a good one to begin with." But, he said, "You're the guy that was at the fire college. You're the guy who teaches for the universities. You're the guy who was this." And I read all your articles in firefighting in Canada. I look forward to them every month. And I said, you know what? I'm just Lyle. And if I shared something with you that helped you, then I'm happy. I met my goal. But I'm no special than anybody else. I don't have any magic potion or anything. I just like to think that I have learned from others, and I've applied those lessons as best I can. And it still astounds me, the opportunities that continue to come up. So will I continue as long as I can? Absolutely. Why? Because I love the industry. I love working with people. And as long as I feel I can contribute something worthwhile, whether it's in Abu Dhabi or Guyana or Pumpkin Patch Corners, doesn't matter. If I can do something that's going to help out, then I'm there.
Knowing you, I know that's right from the heart. You've made a move from public sector to the private sector. What kind of challenges and opportunities does that bring?
Well, you know what? It's for some people, the transition can be very difficult. There's no doubt. I would say that my transition was an easy transition only because I planned for it. I knew that I had a certain, I'll call it stale date, that I knew that I wanted to move on to other challenges at a certain point in my life. And I started moving towards that goal. And Darryl, you and I had many conversations about that. And I told you, I love being in Waterloo. I love being fire chief. I love the staff I had, the firefighters. But I knew that at a certain point, I wanted to make that move. So that's where you and I talked about it. We started that transitional period. I even met with the CAO of Waterloo to let them know what was happening. And that's where I started a succession plan for the staff there, so that when I left, there wouldn't be that void. And if I could touch on that very quickly, a lot of people are under the illusion that when they leave, the company's going to fall apart. And it doesn't. It's like the old analogy of, put your hand in the bucket of water and take it out, and there'll be a ripple effect, but then that ripple stops and the bucket is whole again. And the organizations all need to continue. And I was never under that illusion. I knew that when I would leave an organization, there would be a bit of a gap, because there should be, because you made a difference in that organization. But if you prepare for it, which I did, and I think I was quite successful in it, then the transition could be an easy one. For those who don't plan for it, it can be a bit of a culture shock, because there are two different cultures. In the public sector, I would say it's a little more regimented, a little more designed for job descriptions and that, where when you go into the private sector, it's more about, how should I say, you start to become the jack of all trades, and you work at what you can to help the company move forward. So there is a transitional period. If I was to give anyone a bit of advice, is plan for it, be prepared for the changes and adapt to it. So I think I did that.
What is one misconception about the line of work that you're in that you'd like to clear up?
Well, I think what I say to a lot of the fire chiefs is I'm not truly the expert here. I'm here to facilitate a project. I'm here to utilize your expertise. And what I've said in many of the presentations that I do at fire services is that I know the fire service. I don't know your department. You are the experts in your department. So I'm going to be there to facilitate this, to say this is what the industry standards are. This is legislation. This is best practices. But how does this fit into your organization? So I need your input. So I guess, the biggest lesson that I've learned is don't go in thinking that you know everything, because sooner or later, someone's going to show you don't. The other thing is that I learned a long time ago that the analogy of a consultant is someone who takes your watch and tells you what time it is. And I think I learned from that. And I even joke with the fire chiefs and I say, I'm not here to tell you what to do with your watch. I'm here to, help you bring your fire service into the next level. And, but we've got to do this together. Like, I can't create a document without you. So I think that's the other key lesson, is that it's a joint partnership. And if anybody that's in the industry can even just take that piece away, then I think they'll do very well as a consultant.
Well, very well put, Lyle. And in fact, I can't think of a better way to close this out. Lyle, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you sharing your experiences. I've certainly learned a lot. And on behalf of our host, Darryl Culley, I'd like to thank our audience as well for listening to Conquering Chaos and Mayhem. We'll see you next time.